How's it going? I'm excited to do some testing on this this new release from EPOCH Battery. This is their version 2 of their popular 12 volt 460 amp hour large capacity lithium iron phosphate Elite series battery. Mouthful, I know. I assume they named it the Elite series because they just put everything into this battery and just kind of wanted to put out a premium battery with all the stuff. 460 amp hours is quite a bit to put in one battery, and instead of having to organize and connect all these different 100 amp batteries, we've got 460 amp hours here. And if you wanted to get 2 of these, you know, all of a sudden you've got a 920 amp hour battery bank, which is massive. You know, not long ago I've seen folks that have had a 1,000 amp hour battery bank with, say, 10 100 amp hour lithium batteries, and you're like, whoa, check that out. How much did you pay for that? It's like, oh, 10 grand or more. So, you know, to be able to get that with close to that with a couple of these is really impressive. Nowadays, it's just not as uncommon. You know, what's under the hood? What kind of battery bank you got? And it's like, oh, I got, you know, this 920 amp hour battery. You're like, oh, cool, because it's just more common. A lot of the 460 amp hour form factor batteries hit the market last year in 2024 and maybe some in 2023. But this one has kind of stood out because of a number of features. For one, you know, people realize this has great build quality, and it's a very powerful battery. It has a 230 amp continuous output and a surge of up to like 400 or 500 amps as well. But one of the other key features is that it's got communication capability with your Victron system. So if you're using a Victron power and monitoring system, then this battery can integrate with that, and we'll demonstrate that and how to hook it up and how to get it all set up on a Cerbo GX Victron monitoring system. It's also IP67 rated, so it's basically waterproof and can withstand demanding applications like, you know, mobile applications in an RV or vehicle and in a marine environment. And it also can now be paralleled up to 16 batteries. I don't know why you'd want to connect 16 12 volt batteries. You can if you wanted to. So we'll go through some of those other features that this comes with as we get everything connected and ready to go and get ready to be tested through our Cerbo and the app and all that stuff. But before we do that, before we start connecting things, I want to take a look inside, check out the BMS. We'll see what we can see in there, and we'll go from there. Okay, what I'm gonna have to do is break this seal here on the terminals. I know there's just this silicone around here, so no big deal, but that's what's holding it down. We finally got it loosened up. Took a little while. There we go. Just gradually take it off of here. There we go. What's that look like? There it is. Okay, check this out. This is definitely not your average drop-in replacement lithium battery, but yeah, they've got everything really nicely laid out here. The first thing that jumps out at me is that you don't see hardly any exposed wires. Everything's nicely wrapped, secured, very solid in here. If you try to press on this stuff, everything is really nailed down tight. So this thing is not going to budge. Nothing's going to shift around in here. But yeah, right off the bat, I can also see this massive fuse over here. This is definitely a different fuse from the one that was in the previous model. We can see the model number here. It's a 400 amp fuse and 12 volt. I'm guessing it might be like a resettable fuse, so if it does trip, it's going to have a time delay maybe, and then reset itself. That would really suck if you have to crack this open to get to the fuse. Everything is here on top with the BMS and the fuse and all the electronics, and the cells are stacked up vertically here with the tops of the cells pointing up, and the bus bars and everything are going on the top. But we have 8 cells, 4 pairs. Each cell is 280 amp hours, and if we put 2 of those in series, that gives us our 460, and then we have 4 of those in parallel, which gives us our 13.3 volts or so. And we've got this nice big heat transfer here on top that takes the heat from this big heat sink on top of the BMS and transfers it to this big old heat sink that we see that sticks out on the top of the battery. So keeps it nice and cooled down. So we've got our negative going through here, and then on the positive side of the cells, we've got our positive bus bar here going through the fuse, and that goes out to the terminal here. We've got a temperature sensor here on the positive side. I'm guessing this is a high temperature sensor, and we've got the same thing on the negative side here. There are also going to be some low temperature sensors inside the compartment here. This is going to be a proprietary BMS, I think. I didn't find any information on it. We've also got some heating pads here. Maybe it's just one big heating pad that sits on the back side of the cells over here, and I can't really show it to you. I can just barely see it on the side, and it looks like it's just on one side of the battery cells, and it's all controlled probably with one of these wires here. So overall, great build quality in here. Everything is marked and secured and torqued and double checked, and that's really what we want to see inside the battery. But yeah, we'll put the lid back on, we'll get everything connected, and then get to some testing. All right, well, let's go ahead and connect this battery up. We'll start with some battery cables. I got a couple of cables here that's going to connect it to our test setup, which is going to allow us to charge and discharge and do all those fun things. But probably a good opportunity to take a look at the top of the battery here. Obviously we have our negative terminal here. These are M8 bolts, and positive red and the negative is black. And remember when we cracked open the lid, we saw that big heat sink on the other side of the lid here? This is the other side of that. It's got EPOCH written on it, but this is the other side of the heat sink that's going to let that heat that's being generated from the BMS escape. So this is where that is. This is the power button here, and when we depress it, it's going to turn green, and that's when you know that there's power to the terminals. And right now there's no voltage here because it's off. And we've got some settings here, these little dip switches, and that's going to be used when you connect multiple batteries together in parallel or series, and it just helps the BMS index those batteries so it knows which one is controlling the others. So this isn't something you have to worry about right now, but if you were to do a multi-battery setup using a bunch of these, then you'd have to set those. Right now it's defaulted to this standalone mode. But the book has all the different settings that you want to follow if you do want to connect multiple batteries. And to get to those, you just have to take off these 4 little screws here, and this little plastic thing pops off. This little silver thing here, you might be wondering what that is. It's just a vent. So in case any gases or any buildup inside the battery compartment here from just expansion and contracting and temperature changes and all that stuff, it just gives it a way to vent that out. I don't think it's going to take anything in. It's probably a one-way valve, and it's just going to let those things escape from the case. The other thing is that they give you these this little bag of extra M8 bolts, and I don't know if it's just for extra lugs for the terminals, but it might be also for this here on the bottom. They do sell mounting brackets. So there's 3 of these threaded slots. These are also M8. And if you go to their website, you can order the mounting brackets that go with this. It's, I think, 20 bucks. So worthwhile 20 bucks if you want to mount this to wherever you're mounting the batteries. You could also build your own, I guess. You could just get some angle iron or aluminum and then drill holes in the appropriate spots and then anchor it down to whatever you're anchoring it down to. All right, now we'll tighten these down. This is a 13mm socket. Not too tight. And when I'm done here, I'll show you what a parallel connection looks like. So if you wanted to get 2 of these and connect them in parallel, I do have the old one and I can connect those together just so you can kind of see what that setup looks like. But let's move on with this. All right, well, let's start with the remote switch. I'm not going to use it, but I'll go ahead and plug it in just so you can kind of see. Here it is. It's just this little push button switch, and it is a 4-pin switch. I'm not sure if all 4 are used, but it goes right in here. Just line up the little tab there and it tightens right down. You can see that they've got a lot of extra cable here, so if you want to run this switch all the way across your vehicle or whatever you're installing this on, then you should have lots of cable here to work with. And you can disconnect it temporarily if you need to run this through a bulkhead or something like that, and you should be good to go. Now you can see the difference. Here's the remote that comes with the first version. You don't get as much cable, so I think some people have probably mentioned that, and now they give you a ton of length to work with. All right, now if you take a look at this side, we've got our communication ports, but it's also going to connect our cool little display gauge here to the BMS. So if you want this to work, then you're going to have to connect this cable to here. But it's also the port that we're going to use to connect the BMS to the Cerbo GX. It's a weatherproof connector. It's probably going to say Victron. I think it's supposed to say Victron. Mine was not labeled, and I found some issues with the labels, but I figured out what goes where. So in yours, hopefully it says Victron, but you want to connect that here to this blue one, which is for the BMS and the Victron connection. So it's like a network cable, but this weatherproof enclosure is around it. So we're just going to plug that in here. Just lightly kind of seat it and then tighten it down. And then when we power it up, we should see this display come to life. So we'll just leave that up there. And like the other one, this comes with a fair amount of, I'll just take that out, a fair amount of extra length here. It comes with a couple of brackets. This, if you wanted to mount it, say the top of a dash or something, it can be seated inside here. You can just screw it down. Or if you want to build a control panel and drill a hole and then put it in here, this other bracket can go on the back here and then kind of pinch it in to that control panel surface. So a couple different mounting options, and there's also a couple of little screws that anchor this down. So that's going to be in this little static baggie here. Let's put this guy. So yeah, nice little extra that is going to come in really handy. What else? Okay, the other thing is we have this other longer cable, and it's another network cable, and that's what's going to plug into our Cerbo GX unit. So we'll just leave that for now. We've got our remote switch set up here, and why don't we just turn that on, and this should come to life. Beep. Welcome. There we go. Now the first thing that they're going to ask you to do when you get the battery is to upgrade or update the firmware in the BMS. So in order to do that, you're going to have to download the app, and you should see this piece of paper that comes with the documentation, and it essentially tells you to go to the website, and here's the battery and that page for the battery, and there's a link up here called Firmware Update and Setup Instructions, and download the app. And it's basically a lithium ion. It's like the EPOCH Lion app. And then the next thing you're going to do is get the battery connected to the app, and it's going to show up with a whole bunch of other Bluetooth stuff. If you have other Bluetooth devices, it's going to show up in this list, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But you want to look for the battery, and it's not clearly labeled. It's going to essentially be labeled as the serial number for your battery. In my case, it's H02C whatever and a bunch of numbers. So that's going to be the battery that's going to show up in your Bluetooth list. So click on it and hit on, and it's going to pair with the app, and then at that point it's going to be connected to the battery. And then once it's connected, you want to just follow the instructions. You're going to go to the About tab, and there's a OTR option, which is, I think, over the air. That's what that means. And then follow the instructions in this page here. There's an EMS piece of software on there that you need to update, and then you go through that process to update that, and then you do the firmware upgrade for this BMS. You want to select the 12 volt option for that BMS firmware. It's also going to show you a 24 volt and a 48 volt one. The top one, second from the top below the EMS one, is going to be the 12 volt BMS. So do the EMS first, the BMS firmware second, and then it's going to restart the battery and do all those things, and then you should be good to go. I'm not sure what it's updating. It's not really clear in the instructions, just that it's a new update that they want you to do. Okay, let's go ahead and connect the battery BMS to our Victron test system here. In this case, we're going to use a Cerbo GX, which a lot of people are using. And the first thing we want to do is go in here and check the port that we're going to be connecting to, and it's a VE.CAN port is what it's called. So on this Cerbo GX, I have two VE.CAN options here, 1 and 2. So what I want to do is go into the GX settings and verify that they're set up properly for this BMS. So right now, if I look on my screen here, I have no battery monitor assigned. So I'm going to go to the settings, and I'm going to scroll down all the way to the bottom where it says services. I'm going to expand that, and we see here I got a couple of VE.CAN ports, 1 and 2 on my system. And the first thing I want to do is make sure that this Modbus TCP is enabled, and if it's disabled, it's just not going to work. And then go into the VE.CAN port that you're going to use. In this case, I'm going to use number 1, and I'm going to expand that. And I'm going to look at the profile, expand that, and the one that I want to use is this CAN bus BMS at 500 kilobits per second. So make sure that one is selected, the 500K one, and then you can get out. If you wanted to see if there's any activity on that port, you can see it here. Right now it says passive, which means it's not connected to anything. So we can go ahead and get out of here now and go back to the main settings. All right, so now if we go to our system setup, we go down here where it says battery monitor. Right now it says no battery monitor is assigned. So we haven't plugged it in yet, right? So what you want to do is look for the the cable in the harness that's labeled inverter or INV, but you want to look for this one. It's like a network connection, like a computer network cable, and that's the one you want to use. Look for the one that says inverter. And then we're going to go ahead and plug that in to our CAN port. This one's in the back. So now what I can do is I can select that as my battery monitor, and we should be good to go. Now if I go back to my main screen, it's showing the status from my battery. And now if I tap on that, I can see the state of charge and all that battery information. So I can read all that information right here on the Cerbo. And yeah, so I get all my alarms. And when I do get an alarm, it's going to start making noise through the Cerbo and the Victron system. And yeah, I can monitor all that stuff, device information. I got some other basic information that we can see now from the app as well, but now it's on the Cerbo. And if you're connected to the Victron VRM for online monitoring, remote monitoring, you should then also be able to see and monitor your battery status from there as well. So now we are all connected. You know, we've got the battery connected to the Cerbo, and now we can do our testing and monitor things either through the app or through our Victron system. All right, well, we pushed as much current as we could into the battery before it disconnected, so it's at 100% full, and we'll put a load on it now, and we'll just let it run and see how much we can pull out of the battery. Our target is 460 amp hours, so let's go. Okay, well, we're pulling some heat from the system, see if we can warm this place up, and pulling about 1900 watts right now. It's sitting at about 148 to 150 or so amps that it's drawing, so we'll see how long that goes. Looks like about 3 hours to go. We'll just check back, see where we end up. You can see it's sitting at 0%, but it's still squeezing a little bit more. So I'd say that that we're in good shape. All right, well, my little inverter here is starting to make weird noises, which is what happens when it hits that low voltage point. So it's about to shut down, and we'll just call it at about 469 amp hours. Yeah, there it is, 469. So, good to go. Flat line. All right, well, before we jump into some load testing, I'm just curious what you think of this battery so far. You know, I'm going to be in touch with Epic, giving them some feedback. So if you have anything you'd like to share with them, be sure to leave a comment, and I'm sure they're going to be checking out the video. So let's jump right in and see if we can draw some big loads from this this battery, see how it does. Now the rated continuous discharge current on this battery is 230 amps, so we should have no problem getting there with this setup. And it's got a maximum of 500 amps for you know, it's max for 5 seconds, and then it should throw something. But we'll see if we can push 400 amps, maybe a little higher, and see what happens. We'll just start cranking it up until something goes. All right, we're at 217 amps, 218. I'll let it warm up. So we're getting close to the 230 continuous. And if you remember from the capacity test, I was running 150 amps for most of that time. All right, so that's about 4,000 watts right now. You can see it on here, 4,300 watts. Now my inverter's probably going to start choking on that pretty quick because it's a 3,000 watt inverter. So 400 amps, 455, so 450 amps. Remember, it does have a max of 500 amps for 5 seconds, so oh, it jumped down to 379, back to 440, 410. So we're pulling like 4,600 watts right now or more. And it's just hovering 400 watts. We'll turn this one back on. "466 amps. Oh. Well, it was a battle between the battery and the inverter. I was trying to pull as much as possible, hitting over 470 amps at times. And at the end of the day, the battery won. And the inverter is the first one to die. So I would say that's a win for the battery. And it's a really powerful battery. And yeah, it's still working fine. But I do have some final thoughts on this. I would have liked to see more information from this app. It really doesn't give you a lot of useful information. I mean, you can see the cell voltages and some of the sensors and stuff, and the overall state of charge and that sort of stuff. But that's about it. I couldn't really view any real diagnostic information about alerts and stuff like that. It did throw a warning and then it went away, but I couldn't really tell what it was. The other thing is that I'd love to see more documentation on the communications stuff, specifically the dip switch settings and what they really mean. It just shows what the position should be for different configurations, but it doesn't really explain what each one does. And that would be very helpful if you're trying to diagnose and try to figure out a problem. I also would like to see more documentation on the firmware upgrade. It's just like, do this firmware upgrade, but it's like, what's changed? It's software. So I'd love to see some release notes about what's been added, what's been fixed, just so you have a better understanding of what's going on here. I think once we get into the Victron stuff and communication, it gets pretty technical, and I think a lot of people like to see that information and that level of disclosure and detail about that. So those are the main things. Overall, it's a great battery. If I was redoing my battery bank in the RV, I would definitely go with a couple of these. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Leave your thoughts, questions, if they're for Epic or me, in the comment section, and we'll talk about it down there. But I appreciate you sticking with me through this video, and I hope you got something out of it and there was some helpful information for you, and I will see you in the next one. So take it easy.